Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling, well, a really big question, isn't it? Can you genuinely build significant wealth starting from absolutely nothing? Like zero cash, no connections, maybe even some debt.
Yeah, it feels like it goes against everything we normally hear, right?
So standard advice is always you need money to make money.
Exactly. And look, there's a reason for that. It often works that way for people,
Yeah.
but we've been digging into some fascinating source material for this deep dive, specifically a discussion with an entrepreneur who really insists they did just that. Started with nothing, built something substantial.
Okay, so our mission today isn't just to retell their story. We want to unpack the actual arguments, the strategies they use, and maybe some of those uncomfortable mindset shifts they talk about to see if we could figure out this pathway they describe for building wealth from scratch. Is there really a blueprint here?
Let's try. And maybe we should start right with the skepticism, because that's the first hurdle for most people.
Absolutely. It's the elephant in the room. You hear this and immediately think, okay, but what was the real story? A lucky break, help from family, a secret loan.
Right. That belief that you need capital to get started, it's just so deeply ingrained.
It feels almost like a law of physics, financially speaking.
It does.
Wow.
But what's really striking about this source material is how strongly it argues against that. It basically says, look, a lack of money isn't the real roadblock you think it is. The real starting point, the thing you actually need, is resourcefulness.
Resourcefulness.
That's it.
Yeah, that's a different frame. So the argument is wealth doesn't just magically appear from dollars. It comes from solving problems people have.
Exactly. Providing real value, building skills that people actually need and will pay for, and crucially, having the right mindset and then just taking action consistently.
So it's less about what's in your bank account right now and more about your approach, your effort.
Precisely. Which leads directly into what this source identifies as the absolute first thing you have to tackle, even before you make a single dollar.
Okay, what's that?
It's your mindset, your belief system. The argument is, if you're starting from zero, the first thing you've got to fix, or maybe rebuild, is what's going on inside your head. That's the real zero you need to shift from.
That makes a lot of sense. And talks about contrasting this waiting mindset.
Yeah, waiting for the perfect time, the perfect job, the economy to get better, waiting for someone to give you permission.
Right. Contrasting that with what they call the rich mindset.
And the rich mindset, as they describe it, isn't about just wishing for things or feeling entitled. It's about agency. Right now, it's constantly asking, okay, what can I do today? With what I actually have right now, skills, knowledge, time, however limited.
So bypassing the waiting game entirely and jumping straight into doing something.
Yeah.
Anything.
That's the core idea. Action over hesitation.
Okay, so let's say you're working on that internal shift, which sounds like hard work in itself. What's the next really practical thing this source pushes? It seems big on specific skills.
Oh, absolutely. And it really boils it down to two main ones. Two skills, they argue, are pretty much essential if you have no money. The first one, well, it might sound a bit intimidating, but it's learning how to sell.
Selling. Okay, images of like door-to-door salesmen or relentless cold calls come to mind. That sounds rough if you're already feeling low on confidence.
Huh. Yeah, it's broader than that, thankfully. The source defines it more as being able to effectively communicate value. Persuading someone that what you offer, whether it's a product, a service, or even just you and your potential, is worth their time or money.
Okay, so like copywriting or knowing how to pitch freelance work, social media marketing.
Exactly, those kinds of things. And the entrepreneur in the source, they shared this specific story. Their very first money came from flipping old phones they found on Craigslist. Their starting capital wasn't cash. It was just using basic negotiation and sales skills to buy low and sell a bit higher.
Ah, okay. That makes it concrete. You're not waiting for a sales job. You're using the skill of selling immediately to create cash. What's the second key skill they mentioned?
Learning digital skills. And this is presented as, well, incredibly accessible these days compared to maybe 20 years ago.
What kind of digital skills?
Things like building a basic website, nothing too fancy, simple video editing for social media content, understanding the basics of how online ads work. And the big point they hammer home is, you absolutely do not need a 4-year degree or expensive courses for this stuff initially. You can learn the fundamentals of these skills mostly for free online. Think YouTube tutorials, free trials of software, blogs.
That definitely lowers the barrier. And the source really emphasizes learning by doing, right? Not waiting until you're an expert.
Exactly that. The perspective is very much, you get good, by trying things out. You watch a tutorial, you try it, you probably mess it up the first few times.
Definitely.
You learn from what went wrong, you adjust, and you keep going. It's about building actual practical skill and momentum through just doing it, not waiting until you feel perfectly qualified. Because really, the qualification comes from the doing.
Okay, got it. So, mindset work is underway. We're actively building these core skills, selling and digital stuff. Now let's get really practical. What specific ways does this source suggest someone with literally $0 can start making that first bit of income? It mentioned 3 main hustles.
Yep, 3 concrete starting points. First one, freelancing. Basically, offering services based on those skills you're just starting to build. Writing, maybe some basic graphic design, video editing, managing social media accounts, virtual assistant tasks.
And where do you find people who'd pay for that if you have no track record?
Platforms like Upwork and Fiverr are mentioned specifically because they're free to join. You can create a profile, list your services, and start bidding on small projects or offering simple gigs.
Okay, so trading your time and developing skills directly for cash. What was the second zero capital option?
Flipping items. This is like that phone example, but broader. The core idea is finding things that are undervalued in one place, maybe Facebook Marketplace, local buy-sell groups, even thrift stores, and then selling them for a profit somewhere else online.
Like classic arbitrage, but starting really small scale.
Exactly. The source mentions sneakers and electronics specifically as things the entrepreneur flipped early on for decent small profits.
Interesting. Exploiting little market inefficiencies with online tools. Okay, and the third path they suggested for starting from zero.
Content creation, which sounds maybe bigger than it is initially. It means starting small, building an audience on platforms that are easy to get started on, like TikTok or YouTube Shorts, or even just running a theme page on Instagram focused on a niche interest.
And how does that make money with zero investment?
The focus first is just consistency, providing value or entertainment, getting eyeballs. Then, once you have even a small, engaged audience, you can look at monetization. Things like affiliate marketing, recommending products you use, and getting a small commission, or eventually maybe small brand deals.
Right. Okay, these 3 paths, freelancing, flipping, content, they do seem doable without needing startup funds.
Right.
But let's be real, starting anything when you feel like you have nothing and maybe no clue, that feeling of paralysis is real. The source addressed that lack of confidence, didn't it?
It did, very directly. And the advice is, well, pretty blunt. Start ugly.
Start ugly.
Yeah. It acknowledges that you will probably suck at first. Your first video will be bad. Your first pitch might be awkward. Your first flip might barely break even.
Okay.
And that's not just okay, it's actually expected. It's part of the process. The key insight they offer is that confidence isn't something you sort of conjure up by thinking positive thoughts or waiting to feel brave.
Right. It doesn't just arrive.
No. According to this view, confidence is built through execution, through actually doing the thing.
Even if the thing you're doing is messy and imperfect.
Especially then, it's about getting those first tiny, tangible wins, selling that first tiny $10 service, making your first $5 profit flipping something, getting those first few genuine likes or comments on your content.
Oh, okay. Those small validations are what actually build the belief.
Far more than just planning or worrying ever could. Confidence comes from proving to yourself, even in a tiny way, that you can do it. Competence demonstrated leads to confidence.
Okay, mindset, skills, taking messy action. Got it. But what about the whole networking piece? You always hear, your network is your net worth. If you're starting from zero, maybe your network is also zero.
Yeah, that's another area where this source kind of challenges the usual advice. It argues that, sure, having a great network already is helpful, obviously, but it's not a requirement to get started. You can build a network even with no money and no existing connections by focusing on making yourself valuable first.
Valuable first. How do you do that practically if you can't, say, take someone influential out for a fancy lunch?
Right. You leverage free platforms and your time. The strategies mentioned were things like joining relevant Facebook groups in your niche and actually participating, adding thoughtful comments, not just lurking, consistently engaging with posts on LinkedIn from people you want to connect with again, offering real insight, not just generic comments. And this was a big one. Actively looking for small ways to help people without asking for anything in return.
That feels different. Usually networking feels quite transactional.
It does. And they gave this really clear example. Instead of sending a cold message to some busy expert asking, "Can you mentor me?" which likely gets ignored.
Yeah, probably.
What if you notice a small typo on their website? or broken link. You send a quick, polite message, just letting them know, expecting nothing back.
Ah, offering unsolicited help.
Exactly. That kind of value-first gesture, it cuts through the noise. It starts building what the source calls social capital. And the argument is when you're starting from zero, that social capital, that goodwill and trust, is way more valuable initially than financial capital. You give first to earn the right to connect later.
Give first. Build trust.
Yeah.
Okay, this whole process, the mindset shift, learning skills, the messy action, building social capital, it all sounds like it requires immense discipline. Did the source talk about specific daily habits that were crucial in those early days?
Oh, definitely. The routine described wasn't flashy, but it was incredibly consistent. It included things like waking up early, getting a jump on the day before the world starts demanding your attention.
Okay, the early bird thing.
Yep. Also, reading at least 10 pages of a useful book every single day, non-negotiable. Keep feeding your brain.
And continuous learning.
And making a conscious effort to learn one new specific skill or useful idea daily. Could be tiny, a new keyboard shortcut, a better way to phrase an email, a small tweak to an editing technique. Just constant micro improvements.
So always learning, always improving. What about the action part in the habits?
Taking uncomfortable action daily was central. It wasn't treated as optional based on mood. It meant actually sending those pitches even if you felt scared, making that awkward phone call, publishing that video even if you thought it wasn't quite ready, pushing past the discomfort.
Wow, okay. Daily uncomfortable action.
And then, importantly, reflecting nightly. Just briefly reviewing what worked today, what didn't, what I need to adjust for tomorrow.
That reflection piece feels easy to skip when you're just exhausted from the hustle.
For sure. And the source had a couple of really potent quotes about why these habits matter so much.
Yeah.
One was, "The rich don't live by emotion, they live by systems," implying that success comes from the structure, not just feeling motivated.
Okay, systems over feelings.
And another related one, "You don't rise to your goals, you fall to your habits," meaning your baseline, your consistent daily actions, are what ultimately determine your trajectory, not just your big ambitions.
You fall to your habits. That's powerful. Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. Someone follows this tough path. They do the mindset work, build skills, take that ugly action, start networking by giving value, and they actually make their first few hundred, maybe their first $1,000. How does the source suggest scaling that? Going from that initial small win to maybe $10,000 or $100,000?
Right. This is that critical transition phase. Once you've actually proven you can create value and earn some money, the game shifts from just getting by to strategic growth. And the very first step they emphasize is reinvesting.
Yeah.
Taking that initial money you earned.
And not immediately spending it on, like, a celebratory dinner.
Maybe a small one, but no. Primarily reinvesting it back into yourself or your little operation. That means buying better tools to be more efficient, investing in courses or books to deepen your skills, maybe improving the quality or presentation of your service.
Okay, sharpening the axe. Makes sense.
Then as your skills improve and you start getting better results for your clients or customers, the next step is consciously raising your rates.
Charging more because you're delivering more value.
Exactly, reflecting your increased competence and the demand you're building.
What happens when you raise your rates and get too busy?
That's the next stage. Leverage. Learning to use other people's time. This could mean hiring a virtual assistant for simple tasks, outsourcing things you're not great at, maybe eventually building a small team. You stop being the only one doing everything.
Moving from freelancer to business owner, essentially.
Right. And the final step in this scaling process, according to the source, is building assets.
Building assets. How does that work if you started with, say, freelance writing?
It's about packaging your knowledge, skills, or even the audience you've built into things that can generate income more passively, or at least without trading time directly for money quite so much.
Like what?
So maybe turning your freelance expertise into an online course or an ebook, creating templates or digital downloads related to your skill, building an affiliate marketing website in your niche that earns income over time.
Got it. Creating things that can work for you even when you're not actively working on them.
Exactly. The source kind of summarizes this whole scaling journey as moving from working for money to building systems that work for you.
That's a huge shift from technician, maybe, to system builder. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, this deep dive into the source material, it really lays out a challenging path, no doubt about it. But it does feel like a detailed blueprint. It tackles the skepticism head on, demands that internal mindset work first, insists on specific skills, and that messy action.
Right. Redefines networking as giving value, anchors everything in those daily disciplines.
And then shows a path to actually scale things up. It paints this picture where maybe your starting point doesn't have to dictate your entire future.
Yeah, it fundamentally tries to reframe being broke as just a temporary condition, not who you are. It really emphasizes that it's about what you do with whatever you have right now.
Which leads us perfectly to that really provocative final thought from the source material. Something for everyone listening to maybe chew on after this deep dive?
Yeah, the line was, "You're not broke, you're just pre-rich."
Pre-rich. It's quite a statement, isn't it?
It really is. It's kind of a challenge. Stop identifying so strongly with the current lack of money and start adopting the mindset, the habits, the action taking of someone who is already building wealth.
What would it actually mean for you listening right now to start acting like that today?
Definitely something to think about.
A lot to consider. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the source material today.